Okay, so I should probably film this comp recap. As of tomorrow, it will literally have been a month since I competed. I've been putting off this recap for a month. I have had a really busy month, to be fair, which is part of the reason why I've not filmed this yet, but also, to be honest, I don't feel like I have tons to say. Like, I'm not unhappy. I'm also not happy with how the day went, but I want to wrap up this series, so I'm going to talk through the day anyway. Also, if you can hear a noise in the background, that is Zuko with his chew. He's laying right beside me, and if I try and kick him out, he won't leave me alone. So just going to leave him down there, so apologies for that background noise. Let's talk through the day. So, firstly, weight cut. As always, or as seems to be becoming regular for me, the weight cut wasn't super smooth sailing. Like, it was fine. Essentially, I've been working with Jane Jones since, I think it was end of March. I think we started working together. And to be fair to her, I threw her straight into like back-to-back comps. I think we worked together for 6 weeks and did a comp. 6 weeks later, did another comp. So back-to-back comps doesn't really give her time to get to know me, get used to working together. But I will say I am also like, I'm pretty dialed in with my nutrition anyway. The reason I signed up with her wasn't even for the weight cutting side. It was to help me stay accountable outside of competition, because that is my biggest issue when it comes to nutrition, and I usually go off the rails between comps and then I have to diet back down, obviously, into comp, which I'd like to avoid doing sometimes. Sometimes it's good to sit heavier, but it was getting a problem. So that's why I hired Jane, and it's been really fun actually trying a different way of cutting into comp. So normally for myself, what I would do previously is diet down to very low 85s, high 84s, and then just gut cut the last little bit off, depending on how close I am, for anywhere from like 1 to 3 days I'll do a gut cut. And with Jane, what we've been doing is we've been slowly manipulating my food from about a week out, and we're also doing a water load, and we did this for both of these comps. Now, the first comp, if you've watched that comp recap, you'll know I ended up having to hot bath because I didn't really respond to it. So for the second comp, which was the comp that I've just done, All England's, we were a little bit more aggressive with the water load. The nutrition side kind of stayed the same, but the water load, we were like a little bit more aggressive. Now, I think an important note here is that when I did this comp, we were going through a bit of a heat wave here in the UK at the time of me doing this comp and this weight cut. And I am someone who generally retains quite a lot when the temperature spikes. And this is something we kind of knew. So the plan originally was to diet down low 85s for the weight cut, and then just do a simpler, easier weight cut than we did do for powering through, which is the region I did 6 weeks before. But the weather kind of threw a spanner in the works, so I started to drop really well. I was actually trending down to like very low 85s, potentially high 84s, and then the temperature in the UK just spiked, and my weight spiked with it, and I ended up sitting more like 86s. So we still did the plan, we still did manipulation. We started manipulating my food from a week out, and we started doing a water load from a week out, and we just did a more aggressive approach to the water load, because also with the extra heat here in the UK, obviously I was just naturally drinking more anyway. So we were more aggressive with the water loading. Now, midweek, there was a little bit of a drop in temperature, and my body weight dropped off with it, and I ended up waking up like 2 or 3 days out at 84.7, which was kind of ahead of schedule. We hadn't really started the full gut cut at this point, like we'd just been manipulating slightly. So I was like, oh my God, this weight cut's gonna be so easy. So I did my usual, except the temperature then shot straight back up, and my body weight decided to essentially shoot straight back up. And I ended up waking up one day out from comp at like 85.2 or 3, I think. I might have even been heavier than that. So basically, the weight cut again didn't really have the effect we needed it to. So the night before comp, I did have a little bit of a warm bath, not super hot, because I get quite lightheaded and dizzy when I have hot baths, which is why I like to try and avoid that where possible with comps. But I just had a warm-ish bath just to kind of raise my body temperature, get me sweating a little bit during the night. And I'm glad I did that, because then when I woke up the next morning, I think at 6 AM I was 85 on the dot. Went back to bed for a couple of hours, didn't really sleep, but just kind of laid there in bed, kept myself wrapped up, trying to like sweat a little bit while I was in bed. And then I woke up at about 84.8, and then I just had to manipulate that off. And thankfully my weigh-in was at 12 PM. I had until 11 to check out from the hotel, and the hotel was literally around the corner from the venue. So because I'd hot bathed the night before, my weight came off pretty easily that day anyway. So I literally had like a 20-minute warm bath, like it wasn't super hot, just to get me sweating. I did a little bit of spitting, but not loads. And with that, and then just kind of slowly getting ready, my weight kind of just fell off anyway. And I ended up weighing in at, I can't even remember what I weighed in at, let me check. I ended up weighing in at 83.9, so pretty perfect to be fair. And to be honest, I didn't feel rough from the weight cut, like at all. Like I felt fine, but what I will say is mentally, I couldn't really be bothered. Like the whole night before comp, I was having these dreams where I woke up like way over. Like if I'm within a kilo, I will comfortably sweat that off, spit that off, get it off, no problem. But unless it's like a super, super important meet, any more than that, I was literally just thinking to myself throughout the night, if I wake up above 85, I'm just gonna go home. Like I'm not gonna compete, I'm just gonna go home. I don't care at this point, like I'm just gonna go home. And I very much had that mindset literally all night. Like I'd wake up between like dreams where I was literally just dreaming about waking up heavy. And then I just had these moments where I was like, it's just not worth it. Like I don't need to be at this comp. And I think, to be honest, the thought did settle in around like the couple of days out when I realized my weight cut wasn't going as easy as it should be. The thought did creep in of, you literally don't need to be doing this. Like you don't need to do this. I've already qualified for British. I came third at British last year, which means I don't need to do these qualifying comps. I was doing it for a bit of fun to try and retain my English title, you know, just that sort of thing. And because I had those thoughts, it kind of just crept into the whole day. So after I'd made weight, I mean, I had a fun day. Like my friend was there to handle me, had another friend working on the or helping out on the platform, and a few other people I knew were about and like helping on the platform and stuff as well. And it was a really lovely atmosphere in terms of who was there, who I was competing with, just generally. But I didn't want to try. And that was the theme of the day. So I'm gonna go through the actual day. So after I'd weighed in 83.9, I had quite a lot of time before I had to get under the bar. So just did my recomp process. We kind of split it up slightly differently to last time, but I'm not gonna go into detail about that because that's not super interesting unless you guys wanna know more about that side of things, which obviously I can talk about in a separate video. But we'll talk through the actual day itself. So when I started warming up for squats, the floor in the warm-up room was quite slippery underneath, like where I was walking out for squats, basically around where the combos were. And that is not an excuse. Like it wasn't dangerous, it was fine. It was just something I was very aware of as soon as I started warming up at 70. And something about squats just felt off. And I think in my head, I was like, oh no, it's because the floor's slippery. You're just overthinking it and just being a bit cautious. But I did my last warm up at 160 and I opened at 175, which is a very normal jump for me. 175 is still a pretty conservative opener for me. And I went out and I did my opener and it just didn't feel quick. Like it was fine, but it didn't feel quick. I'll insert it so you guys can have a look. And I think it's worth saying here as well, I knew at the start of the day that if I was a good powerlifter was how I was going to win this, because I was probably the most experienced on the platform, well, out of the people in the battle anyway, and I believe that I'm also the strongest. I just also have to be a good powerlifter with it. And even if I necessarily wasn't feeling, even if I wasn't feeling 100% up for pushing myself, if I was sensible and made the right calls, I could still win, was kind of the attitude I had for this. So after my opener didn't feel super easy, we just took a 10 kilo jump. Usually I would take about a 15 or anywhere up to a 15 kilo jump. And the plan was a 15 kilo jump, but I just didn't feel particularly confident. And like, honestly, I just didn't really want to try. And that is an awful attitude to have on comp day, but that is full honesty how I felt. And I think the fact that I had that attitude literally throughout the whole day is kind of why I've been putting off this recap, because I don't want to admit it out loud. But yeah, I didn't really want to try super hard. I know I can grind a squat if I have to. Didn't really want to. So I took a 10 kilo jump to 185 and I'll insert that now so you can see how that moved. So yeah, we just took a 7.5 jump to 192 after that 185. The 185 felt okay. It didn't feel super easy, didn't feel super hard. I think it felt more natural than my opener did in terms of movement pattern and just like confidence under the bar. But it just wasn't my usual like strong poppy squat that I would want on my second. So we just took a conservative jump to 192 because I knew the only way I was going to win this was if I just took conservative jumps. And I didn't really want to try. again, literally theme of the whole meet, as you'll see as we go on and you watch these videos back. So I'm just going to show you the 192 and you can make your judgments of what you think I had left in that squat. So I think it's worth noting here that after I meet at powering through, where I went 1 for 3 on squats, which is very out of character for me, my confidence on squats had been knocked, particularly around squatting on the platform, which is also why I think I wasn't in the mindset to really push hard and try really hard. Like, I wanted to just secure numbers, which obviously is the right attitude to have in terms of securing numbers, but also you need to try. But I walked off after the 192. I felt super fresh. I knew it was like really easy for me for a third. Like, again, I can grind a squat, and I went 3 for 3 and I was happy with that. Like 192.5, it's 2.5 off of my best on a day where I honestly just didn't, at this point in the meet, I would say, I didn't really want to be there. Like until squats were done and I was onto bench, I didn't really want to be at the meet, I'll be honest. Obviously I wasn't going to leave and I was still going to do my best. But I went 3 for 3, hit 192, 2.5 off my best. So I ended squats in a good position. Then moving on to bench. So anyone that knows me knows that bench is my best lift. It is my favorite lift, particularly on comp day. Bench seems to have just been going really well in comps. Like, I've kind of been peaking it perfectly for the last few meets, and it always just shows up on comp day. So I managed to hit another 2.5 PB from powering through. I'm just kind of going to jump ahead. I will show you all of my attempts, but yeah, I managed to go in and hit another PB, which I was really happy about. Literally in a 6-week turnaround. Another fairly, not harsh weight cut, but you know, having to hot bath and stuff the morning of comp. And I still managed to hit a bench PB. So I'm just going to play you all of my attempts, starting with my opener at 110. I then took the planned jump to 115. And then just to chip away and get a nice platform PB, again, I then loaded 117.5 for my third. And as you can see, it moved pretty well. So I will say one thing I know from this comp and from powering through that I did 6 weeks before is I definitely need to get better at slightly longer pauses on my chest with higher loads. But to be honest, I didn't get press commands in any of my training leading into either of those comps. Normally what I would do is get my boyfriend to come out and give me press commands in the garage when I am close to a meet, like for the last block or two into comp, even if it's just for my top singles, just so that I get used to waiting for that and that anticipation. But equally, I've been doing this long enough now, like I've been competing long enough that I know to wait for press commands, and sometimes it just means going a bit more conservative on the day. Although, to be fair, I haven't hit 117.5 in training in a very long time, so I was super happy to hit that on the platform. Powering through, I hit 115, which was a 2.5 PB as well. Again, 6 weeks between these two meets, between powering through and All Englands, and I hit the 115 at powering through, and I definitely felt like there was room left, and considering that was not a good day overall, I was pretty confident going into the English that I could do this. I was nervous opening on 110, I'm not gonna lie, but I also told myself, like, I've not failed a 110 bench in a very long time, and I can make it move any given day. Even if I got reds for elbow depth on my first, I know I can sink it into my chest and still press 110. Pretty sure I could last and press 110 at this point. Like, I was fine. And I just had to remind myself of that and like push myself out of my comfort zone, take the 110 opener, because there was no way of me hitting 117. Like, I wasn't willing to take a 5 kilo jump to my third. And in terms of the battle for podium and for winning, I knew that bench was where I was going to make up as much ground as possible. I have the lowest deadlift of the group, which is not a surprise. When I say of the group, I mean of the three of us battling for that first place position. yeah, I have the lowest deadlift, so I am very much subtotal, get as much out of my squat as I can, which is why normally my third squat is more grindy than the one I did in this day, and my third bench, typically I have to be not aggressive to the point of risking anything, but I have to secure every kilo I can, and I have to make up that gap there, because then going into deadlifts is where I maybe am not quite as strong, which I do think is a confidence thing, and if you want to know more about what I'm doing to address my deadlift issues, obviously you can keep following my training in future videos. But yes, so leaving bench, I was on 192.5 squat, 3 for 3, and then 3 for 3 on bench, 117.5. So at this point, I was 6 for 6, and I was really happy with that. Like, I just wanted to make attempts this day, and my mood had absolutely shifted at this point. I still wasn't really in the mood to grind anything out, but I was definitely just enjoying being there at this point, and I was feeling more glad that I stuck it out and still competed. So we'll chat through deadlifts. Okay, so I think we need a bit of context for deadlifts, because if you didn't follow my training leading into this comp, deadlifts and I have a rocky relationship. And I do think most of that just stems down to previous injuries, creating a bit of a confidence barrier for me in deadlifts. Like, I just get nervous. I'm not as confident when things start to slow down. I'm a slow lifter, and I just have to accept that I'm a slow lifter and that there's still kilos left just because something's slow. But with deadlifts, I struggle to make that and kind of rationalize that in my head, I guess. Hopefully that makes sense. So around 10 days out is where I take my last heavy single on deadlifts. And it's never like a max effort single. It's just a single, roughly RP 7 to 8, and then I will essentially just taper into comp. Conventional deadlifts, at least for me, and a lot of people I work with, really do respond well to around a 10-day taper. So that's what I did in my training. Previously, that's worked really well for me. And 10 days out, I went to pull 180 kilograms, which is not max effort for me. My best ever is 190. I have gotten stronger since then. My deadlift, on the other hand, has decided to disappear. But 180 is around my last heavy pull for my last few comps, and I was pretty confident going in that I could do that. I didn't do that. I completely failed 180. I think I got it to around my knees, and then I just stopped and just put it on the floor, literally just let go. So if you haven't watched that training session back, I had the biggest meltdown. I gave myself a talking to, sat down for like 4 or 5 minutes, got some good music on, was like, you could have had that, you just gave up. Said this to myself, went to pull 180 again, didn't have it. Messaged my boyfriend, asked him to come in and load 175 for me because I needed to pull something, and I knew I had 175 based on warm-ups. I mean, I thought I had 180 based on warm-ups. So we loaded 175, he came out and did that for me, and then him and my dog sat watching, supporting me, and I failed 175. And then I continued to have a meltdown. There were a lot of tears between each of those deadlifts, and then the rest of the night there were a lot of tears, and it really knocked my confidence, which I would not recommend to anyone. If you fail your last deadlift, don't keep trying. Like, it's dumb, don't do that. But in that moment, I couldn't rationalize it with myself, and I was just so annoyed with myself, and training was rocky for the last few months. Like, even now, a month after comp, like, I've just had another terrible block, but that was also kind of because of life circumstances. But training for me hasn't been the usual trend that it was. Like, things have started to stall, things have started to slow down, things just aren't adding together as well at the moment. Life's been chaotic for the last few months, and that had taken its toll on my enjoyment of training, which then will take a toll on the results of my training. So that deadlift session, not great. And then the next day, I was just in the most down mood, didn't want to do anything, didn't want to speak to anyone, I just was so miserable the whole of the next day. And then the Thursday, which was about 8 days out, I had my really light squats and bench session, and I just had this voice in the back of my head that was like, just retry your deadlifts today. Just go in, confident, have fun. Just redo your deadlifts today. And I did, which, again, wouldn't recommend. Just would not recommend. Do as I say, not as I do. But I pulled a 177.5 single, and it was really easy. Now, what I did differently is I took more warm-ups closer to top end. So I started taking smaller jumps closer to top end, and it just fueled my confidence a little bit more. So I pulled 177.5 about 8 days out, and it was really comfortable. So I'm telling you this whole story to say that because of this, my attempt selection was a little bit different and my jumps were smaller. So after I had the massive session where I failed everything and was gonna cry, I was in my head was like, I'm gonna have to open it like 150 on deadlifts and just take 15 kilo jumps, because I'm gonna gas out if I take smaller jumps than that. Everything's gonna go terribly. And obviously that wasn't what was gonna happen. That wasn't true. So when I then redid my deadlifts on the Thursday, I let myself just take more warm-ups. Like I think I did 170, 120, 150, 160, 170, 177.5. And normally I wouldn't do that many above like the 140, 150 range. Like I wouldn't just jump 10 kilos at a time. But I did, and it felt really good. So on comp day, I was like, okay, I know whether it's confidence or whether it's true in terms of physical strength, I am not able to do 2 pulls 180 plus in a comp. Like the last few comps where I've tried it, it's not ended well. So my second attempt can't be any higher than 177.5 is kind of what I told myself. So I opened at 167.5 so that I could take a 10 kilo jump to 177.5, which is exactly what I did. Opening below 170, in my mind, super easy peasy, can do that any day, no problem, no risk. Open at 167.5. I jumped 10 to 177.5 and it felt good. And I was like, let's just not risk anything. We'll just load 7.5 kilos more and secure a total PB and put 185. So I'm just gonna play you my deadlifts. So as you can see, I went 3 for 3 on deadlifts, which means I went 9 for 9 for the first time since August 2022. I went 9 for 9. I hit a 2.5 bench PB and a 2.5 total PB. And technically now, all of my best lifts on open powerlifting add up to more than 500 kilos. I believe they add up to 502.5. Now, I went 9 for 9. I hit a bench PB. I hit all of my deadlifts. I didn't really want to be there, so I can't complain. I literally can't complain because I wasn't my strongest going in. I wasn't my best powerlifting self. Like I wasn't my usual, like don't get me wrong, I'm not a massive fan of competing. Like I don't love comp day. Like I enjoy having competition. I perform best when there is close competition because I have to then be a really good powerlifter. But I thrive in like those volume blocks post comp when you're building and I know I'm working towards these big goals. Like that's where I thrive, and I just mentally didn't really want to be there on comp day. I managed to get through it. I went 9 for 9. I hit a 2.5 total PB and none of my lifts looked max effort, and to be honest, none of them felt it. I think the only lift where I probably would have failed if I went a little bit heavier was bench, because I think I couldn't have held the 120 on my chest. The press commands were quite strict. I'm also fairly confident I jumped the press command on the 117.5, but I got 3 white lights, so no one can dispute it. The center ref obviously didn't think I did, so we're going with it. But I don't think I necessarily would have had any more on bench that day. I do think 120 is coming, and I think more than 120 is coming very soon. But squats, if I'd have been in the right mindset and my usual confident self with squats by the time I got to my third, I would have had a lot more. I think I was close to having the strength for 200 that day. I just think mentally I wasn't ready to load it. And this is a conversation I've also had with a few people that were like, oh my God, you had so much left, because I was only 7.5 kilos behind first place. Now I didn't have bodyweight advantage, shock. So I would have had to lift 10 kilos more to secure a win. Obviously her attempt selection would have been a little bit different if she would have known I was a bit closer, most likely. But having said that, had I been in the right headspace, I probably did have 10 kilos more across my lifts. However, I wasn't in the right headspace. So I'm not gonna sit here and say I could have won if I tried harder, because I wasn't able to try harder. Like I got everything out of me on the day that was there, and that is the truth of it. As much as I'd love to sit here and say I absolutely had 10 kilos more if you look at my lifts closely, like yes, if you literally just look at my lifts, I probably did. But if you understand mentally how I was feeling throughout that whole day, and not even the day, the whole prep, then you will realise I didn't have anything else. Like 495 I think was pretty much my limit on the day. And that's fine, because again, this wasn't the comp I needed to show out at. British is my goal this year. Like it is my main focal point. So these comps were just for a bit of platform experience, a bit of fun, just to give me something to aim for in the middle of the year. And now everything is just focused on British at the start of December. So I think that's an important thing to address. Like, just because it looks like you could lift more, it doesn't mean you necessarily can. And we made the right calls on the day for how I was feeling more than anything else. So yeah, that is kind of my comp recap. I don't think there's much else to say. Like, making weight was fine. It wasn't as easy as I liked it to have been. I'd like to have woken up at weight, but equally we now have a massive amount of time to get things sorted. I think this time going into, I was tempted to kind of bulk a little bit in the lead up to British and then diet just before. But I think actually maintaining around the 86 mark is probably the best thing for me to do for this year, and just get myself comfortable sitting around that mark. And then we'll maybe just diet down a little bit closer in December, because we won't be having a heat wave in December, which means my weight cut should hopefully be a little bit easier. And then if I podium again this year at British, technically, I could have a full year's off season, which is sounding quite promising. And with everything else I've got going on in life and just in like personal life, it might be really good for me to have a whole year of not competing, even professionally as well. Like, I've got more and more clients competing and wanting to compete, and a lot of them are in my region. I want to be able to go to all of their meets and support. I don't want my meets to clash with theirs. So it might make sense to have a whole year's off season. And if I do that, you can guarantee I will also be letting myself sit heavier. But this is obviously a conversation for very far in the future. But yeah, I just want to at least put something out and show you guys how this all concluded. It wasn't the meat I wanted, but equally it wasn't a bad meat considering everything else. So I'm okay with the day. I'm not ecstatic, I'm not unhappy, I'm just okay with the day. And I am excited to fine tune some things, make some adjustments, get building momentum again, and get back to the lifter I know I am, and in the mind space of the lifter that I know I am, because that's the thing I've been struggling with most recently. It's just that mind space and the attitude and the approach to those heavier weeks of training. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of find the old me again when it comes to lifting, and I guess show out at the British. I am going to be documenting my training going into my British prep. I say my British prep. I'm not calling it an off season. I've got 4 months now until British, so I'm actually just telling myself I'm in prep for British. I think calling it prep rather than my off season and just saying that I'm in prep for 4 months into British is the best way for me to really stay in the right headspace and also not freak out as British gets closer, which is something that always happens when I have a comp coming up. So anyway, I've not got anything else to say. The comp was fun, it was fine, it happened. I didn't hit the total I know I'm capable of, but that's okay, because it just means that next time I compete, there'll be an even bigger total PB. If you've made it to the end, thank you for watching. I'm apologising that it took me, a month. I don't know when I'm going to get this up by. It took me a month to get this filmed and uploaded, but I am now going to be back, regular uploads on YouTube, documenting my training, probably 1 video a week to start with, maybe go back to 2 or 3, and just keep you guys updated with everything going on in the lead up to British.